If you're having a hard time today understanding someone's perspective, why someone is doing what they're doing, keep in mind that you really have no idea what it's like to be them. Hi, I'm Charlie McKeever, your Happy Man coach, and I am no way in saying that you should not feel the way you're feeling. I'm just saying that you have a choice over the way that you feel. So let me explain. When I say you have no idea what it's like to be that other person, I mean that in a very literal sense. You know what it's like to be a human being. You know what it's like to be you, your experiences, how you feel about things, what you think about things, but you really have no idea what it's like to be that other person. You don't know what they think, you don't know what they believe, you don't know their experiences, you don't know how they've interpreted those experiences, you don't know how they feel about themselves, life, their relationship to life. And so you don't really know what it's like to be them. Steve Jobs was quoted one time as saying to an assistant who tried to empathize with him by telling him that they understood how he felt. He said very angrily, "You have no idea what it's like to be me." Now, the first time I ever read that, I thought, this is arrogance, this is ego, and that he was speaking from that place. But as I have been on my own journey, done personal growth and development, read quite a bit, and talked with men on the regular, I have come to understand that we do not know what it's like to be each other. That we know what it's like to be a human being. We know what our experiences, our own personal experiences are, but we don't know what it's like to be another person. And so that thinking that we should know, that we do know, can lead us to confusion, to frustration, and ultimately to resentment because we think something is supposed to be a certain way and it's not. And we become very upset by that. We become very frustrated by that. And if we apply, overlay, or project onto someone something that's not true, then we can become resentful of their behavior, resentful of the way that of their choices. And all because we've created that in our own mind. This is why I say you have a choice. You have a choice to recognize that, oh, okay, yeah, I really don't understand that other person to the degree that I think that I do, and that my beliefs about that are really made up in my own mind, and they're not necessarily the truth, capital T truth. And so it's really important to know that it does not mean that we give that person a pass. It does not mean that we explain that we accept, and just roll over and take bad behavior. It doesn't mean that we can't set boundaries for ourselves. It doesn't mean that we can't have standards. We can't. It doesn't mean we can't live and make choices according to our own values. It just means that we can stop hurting ourselves with the thought that that person is exactly the same as us and should think and behave exactly the same as we do. See how we can get into this participation where we can create a reality in our mind and then be hurt by that reality, hurt by our thoughts, hurt by the disconnect in our thinking, again experiencing confusion, frustration, and resentment. So we have a choice about that, and we can say, oh, I see. I truly didn't understand that person's experience. I'll give you I'll give you an example from my own life, and then I'll close. Is that growing up, my mother was an alcoholic. She when I went into my adult life, she would call me up and she would say all kind of terrible things to me, call me a terrible son, say all kind of nasty stuff, and then the next day she would not remember what she had said, but she knew that she had called me. And so she would call me up the next day and she would apologize for calling me drunk. And she couldn't say what she had said. And of course, at that time, I wasn't in a place where I set boundaries. I didn't even know that you could set boundaries. I just knew that was my mother and that I loved her. And I would tell her it was okay. It's okay, mama, you know. And I wouldn't tell her what she said to me. I wouldn't, I wouldn't bring all that up. I would just forgive her and move on and hope that she didn't do it again. But ultimately, she would over and over and over again. She would. And I eventually broke contact with her when I was 21. And uh, we never spoke again until she died. We never spoke. And then she died. Um, and she was 65 when she died. And before she died, she wrote a letter. And in that letter, and she had written me many letters over the years, and all of them were pretty much generally the same, kind of saying, uh, kind of trying to guilt me into conversations and stuff. And in this last letter that she sent me, she said, I am a recovering alcoholic, which I was pleased to hear that she acknowledged that and that she was handling that and, facing that for herself. And she said also, I don't know why you hate me, but if you would tell me, maybe we could talk about it, maybe we could work it out. And I remember, and I was reading this letter when she was still alive, and I remember reading this letter going, good that you're a recovering alcoholic. I don't hate you, but I'm really confused by how you have no idea. You have no clue as to the hurt and pain that was caused by your alcoholism, that growing up that was terrible to live with, that all the experiences that we shared together, all the memories that I carry, that somehow you don't remember all of those things. And so I just kind of, it was incredulous, right? I was like, okay, right? And I put that letter in a box and I went on with life because, like I say, she had sent me many letters. And um, and then she died. And I, it didn't really move the needle for me. I had forgiven her a long time ago, and I hadn't talked to her in years. And I really, that part of my heart was just kind of shut down. I was just kind of like, okay. And I came across that letter again one day when I was looking for some other things, and I opened it up and I read it. And this time it said, "I'm a recovering alcoholic." Same words on the page, they hadn't changed. And I was like, "Yep, okay, good." But then I read those same words again that says, "I don't know why you hate me." And this time, instead of resisting the idea that she didn't know, I said, "What if she truly didn't know? What if she truly didn't understand? What if she didn't know what it was like to be a boy, a young boy with an alcoholic mother, right? What, as a woman in her 20s, 30s, 40s, what if she didn't know what it was like for an 8-year old, a 9-year old, an 11-year old, 10-year old, a 15-year old boy to have an alcoholic mother? What if all those shared experiences that we had a shared component to them, but what if we also had very separate experiences of the same event? And it's not to say that she shouldn't be able to remember all those things and she shouldn't be able to understand how those things could be hurtful. It's just to say that she was having her experience of those things as an adult, as a woman, as an alcoholic, as a person struggling with her own demons. And I was having my experience of all of that as a child, as a boy, as someone confused and hurt, trying to figure it all out and trying to stay connected to his source of love and acceptance and food and water, and shelter, and safety. You know that uh, that we were having two very different experiences of the same thing. And so this is why I say we don't know what it's like to be the other person. We can live according to our values, we can set boundaries, we can hold standards, we can make choices. But if we are telling ourselves that that other person should think exactly the way that we do, and that they should feel exactly the way we feel about something, and that that is causing us to be confused, to be frustrated, and ultimately to be resentful, then that's not really them doing that to us. That's us doing that to us. And we have a choice. We have a choice to take a step back and say, okay, what if they think differently? What if we don't really think the same? What if I don't really know what they think or how they feel? What if I just accept what they're saying, right? What if I just accept that they, like in a relationship, a lot of times I talk to guys about divorce, I talk to guys about separation, I talk to guys about marriage problems. What if you just, instead of resisting it, saying she shouldn't feel that way, or I don't understand how she can feel that way, what if you just said, okay, I don't, I don't agree, but I'm not her. What if we just started with acceptance, which is just an acknowledgement of the thing? It's a lack of resistance of the thing, where we're no longer um, overlaying our own understanding onto it, and we say, okay, what if I just took her at her word that she doesn't want to be here anymore? I don't need to understand it. I don't need to struggle with it. I don't need to hold on to it. I don't need to convince her to feel differently, to think differently. I can just go, oh, she doesn't want to be here anymore. This is this is the path for being able to move on in a relationship, to be able to move forward, to be able to move forward after divorce. When our brain is cycling through, doing the math, trying to figure out how everything went wrong, and how you got there, and why it didn't work, and all of that kind of stuff. When we're experiencing that pain of resistance to the reality of what's taking place. So as you go through today, consider this, that you don't really know what it's like to be that other person. You know what it's like to be human. You know what it's like to have your own experiences, but you do not know what it's like to be them. Consider that today and see how that changes your confusion, your frustration, and your resentment in your relationship to that other person. All right, brother. Take care of yourself. I love you, and I'll see you in the next video.